This is the Truth Network.
Hidden treasures of the 119th Psalm. How amazing is the knowledge verse in the Kuf section that we get to study today? It really just blows my mind. It is spectacular. And when you think about this knowledge, because again, we're talking about the anointings from Isaiah 11 as we go through the seven verses that would have to do with the Kuf, with the eighth one being the miracle verse. And so you have the anointings of wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, fear of the Lord, and delight in the fear of the Lord. But so today we get to the knowledge, and what a precious knowledge that is. So we'll read it in English, verse 149. Hear my voice according unto thy loving kindness, O Lord. Quicken me according to thy judgment. And so when you look at that, it is an extremely intimate discussion that has to do with, again, each verse in the 119th Psalm, that's in each section is going to start with a letter of that section. And so the word that starts this verse is the word hear. And the idea of the Kuf, of course, being this idea of closeness to God in both time and space. And so when you think about it, when you ask somebody to hear you, they have to be in present time. And then obviously they got to be close enough to hear. So when he says, hear my voice, he's actually asking God. This is a very intimate thing. Hear my voice according to thy loving kindness. And again, he's setting him up to an extent because he's going to ask him something really difficult. But here he's actually acknowledging how loving God is before he asks him the question that he's going to ask him. Because when you think about what he asked him to do, it's pretty remarkable, because what he then says is, quicken me according to thy judgment. Well, he's saying that make me alive essentially through the tests. In other words, in order to have a testimony, God's got to put you through the testing, through the judgment process. It's a refining process. And so if you're familiar with refining, it takes a lot of heat to get rid of the dross, especially in my case. And apparently it took quite a bit in King David's as well. And so here he's saying, hear me, Lord, this is what I want. I know you're doing it according to your loving kindness, but I want you to put me through the refining process, which we realize is going to be painful. It was extremely painful for King David. And just the intimacy of this, it's just amazing to me what he asked for. And so you may go, Robbie, what does this have to do with knowledge? Well, it has everything to do with knowledge, because knowledge from a biblical standpoint and from the standpoint of Isaiah 11 is an eyewitness to the truth. Okay? So what King David is asking, this phenomenal question, is he wants to be an eyewitness to the truth of his own testimony, right? That to his own way that God worked through him in order to shine brightly. And to eyewitness about the truth about ourselves, right? And so, as we are judged, obviously, we get to see, the truth about ourselves. As I mentioned the other day, I was driving home on the beach from the beach with my wife, which was the reason that there was a couple days that I didn't do these. And as I was coming home from the beach, I had the kind of asked me the same question of my wife. According to your loving kindness, when we were going through these points in my life where I was driven and I worked all the time, when I was in the car business, I would literally leave sometimes at 5 a.m. and not get home after midnight. And I was being such a workaholic. And I said, what was I like back in those days? And she said, you were a jerk. I couldn't help but think, as I was thinking about that this morning, like, oh my goodness, here was the unvarnished truth about how I was behaving, as a result of many wounds that I experienced in my life trying to be the great man my father was. And so it's kind of neat to think that you've got people in your life that you can ask this question according to your loving kindness. Of course, you've got to have somebody that you really trust to tell you, the truth about how you really are, the truth about how you're really acting. But there's nothing like asking God to do because God will put you through the test, right? He's going to show them who they really are. He showed the Jews when they were in the desert and look, they were running out of water. Here's who you are. He showed Moses, when Miriam died and he could no longer get water from Miriam's well, and all of a sudden he had to hit the whole deal. He showed Moses who he was. He showed King David who he was. He even showed Paul who he was. I mean, think about it. In his loving kindness, though, is the way that this happens. And so as how precious is the truth about ourselves when we rip off the mask and we get naked. What's the unvarnished truth about our character? And here, is this beautiful understanding. I mean, what knowledge would that be? How valuable would that be if you're going to really work on, becoming more like Christ? You need to know where you're not like Christ. In other words, got to chip off the rough edges. If you're like me, you probably got plenty of them. So, what a beautiful, beautiful verse. And what a thing to understand when it comes to holiness. Because, again, this knowledge will help you get closer to God. I mean, that's the idea of the kuf. And man, I'm so thrilled with this verse, and I hope you enjoy studying it with me. Thank you.